SpongeBob SquarePants Mysteries Stage Fright. Chapter 9. Now we were getting somewhere. A witness was giving us leads, names, a list of suspects. I'd be mighty glad to have that list. A detective needs suspects like a dishwasher needs detergent. Without 'em, no soap. Everybody thinks it's all happy fun and games at the theater, Beluga said. That we're all constantly bursting into song and dancing our troubles away. She laughed, shaking her head. Oh, but there's always plenty of people getting their feelings hurt, having their hopes and dreams dashed, and getting mad. Why? Sandy asked as she eyed a broken sewing machine in the corner. Sandy walked over to the machine and began tinkering around with it. Beluga started sewing a button onto a vest. Lots of reasons. They didn't get the part they wanted, or they got the part they wanted but they don't like the way the director's making them play it, or they don't like their costume, or they don't get cast at all. Can you think of anyone specific who might be mad about the show? SpongeBob asked as he dusted some cobwebs in the corner of the room. Beluga shrugged and rolled her eyes. There's really too many to count. An awful lot of actors wanted to be in the show at first. They'd heard about King Neptune coming and figured this would be their big break. So when they didn't make the cut, they were furious. I believe you mentioned that a name or two came to mind, SpongeBob urged, impatient to get a list of suspects to investigate. Once they had names, they could start to check out alibis for when the different acts of sabotage had taken place. Beluga hung up the repaired vest and got to work on a pair of pants. Well, if I were you, I'd steer clear of a guy named Bubble Bass. Bubble Bass? SpongeBob repeated, surprised. He knew Bubble Bass well, a nerdy fish who lived with his mother, loved collecting action figures, and often ate at the Krusty Krab, putting everyone through their paces with his extremely picky orders. Beluga nodded. When he heard Martin Dorado was coming back to his hometown to direct a big show here at the Drippy Lane Theater, Bubble Bass got all excited and submitted a script he'd written, hoping Dorado would produce it. Wow! SpongeBob exclaimed. Bubble Bass wrote the show they're putting on? Shaking her head and smiling, Beluga said, No, Dorado rejected Bubble Bass's script, and not in a nice, polite way either. What'd Dorado say to Bubble Bass? Sandy asked. He told him his script was the worst piece of garbage he'd read in all his many years in the theater. Oh, that's pretty bad, SpongeBob admitted. And that no amount of rewriting could ever make it worth performing on any stage anywhere. Oh, wow, SpongeBob tried to finish. And that while he was reading it, he had to put clothespins on his nose because it stinks so bad. Yowza! And that he was slogging his way through the third act. It took all his willpower to keep from puking his guts out, Beluga concluded. So, he didn't like it, Sandy observed. Beluga smiled a grim smile. You could say that. How did Bubble Bass react to Dorado's, critique? SpongeBob asked. Beluga thought, remembering his exact words. Well, he screamed, This is an outrage! Screamed a voice from the stage. What was that? Sandy asked, running toward the door. It sounded like Bubble Bass! SpongeBob cried. Come on! He started to run toward the stage, then turned back, remembering he was supposed to be in charge of cleaning, not detecting. Beluga, your costume department is now dust-free! Then he then took off. And I added an extra fast speed setting to this here sewing machine so you can redo all the costumes lickety-split, Sadie said to Beluga as she ran after SpongeBob. Thanks, be careful, Beluga called after them, turning back to her sewing. When they reached the edge of the stage, they saw that rehearsal had come to a grinding halt. Actors were standing around or even sitting on the floor, clearly annoyed at the interruption. Pearl took the opportunity to sneak a look at her cell phone. Patrick buried his head in the script, studying his line. Bubble Bass, a big fish with an orange shirt and black-rimmed glasses, was confronting Martin Dorado, getting so close to him that spit from the furious nerd's mouth kept flying onto the director's face. "An outrage, I say!" Bubble Bass shouted, shaking his fist. "First, you cruelly insult my script!" "Actually, given how absolutely appalling it was," Dorado said coolly, "I think I was rather kind." "Then you refuse to mount a production of my brilliant play at your crummy old theater!" "How am I supposed to put on a hit show with a terrible script?" "And now you dare to steal ideas from me!" Bubble Bass roared, vibrating with rage. "Steal?" the director asked, taken aback. "What absurd idea of yours did I ever steal?" Gesturing toward the actors on the stage, Bubble Bass said, "Don't try to deny it. I just secretly watched the scene you're rehearsing. A musical number in which a little human girl sings of her ardent longing for fins and a tail so she can see what life is like at the bottom of the ocean. That was the very premise of my script, sir." The actress playing the little human girl sheepishly stepped out of a pair of fake human legs and hid them behind her back, and she whistled a jaunty tune, trying to look innocent. Dorado scoffed. "Ridiculous! This number is only a small part of the show, and it's based on an old folk tale, not your atrocious script. There isn't a single line, lyric, or piece of business in this scene that was in your so-called play. Now get out of my theater. You're wasting our precious rehearsal time." He turned his back on Bubble Bass and gestured to a couple of big stage hands. "Do me a favor, gentlemen. Take this trash out." Ooh. Grinning, the muscle-bound stageheads started walking toward Bubble Bass, rolling out their sleeves and punching their fists against their fins. Bubble Bass gulped. He was not one for physical conflict. He was much more interested in role-playing games, where he let miniature figurines do all his fighting for him. "No need for fistcuffs!" he yelped. "I shall see myself out." He scurried toward the stage door and opened it. Before exiting, he turned back and shouted, "But I'm warning you, you have not heard the last of Bubble Bass. This act of blatant thievery shall not stand." Bubble Bass waddled out through the door, slamming it shut behind him. Wham! Stay tuned for Chapter 10, coming up soon.